All right, and welcome to the Revy Show, a show where we share revelation that's going to help you grow in your walk with God, leadership, and relationship with others. I am your host, Josue. Thank you so much for jumping in today's segment, Monday Message. Super pumped for you to hear today's message on how to build more capacity in your organization, Part 2. That's right, you heard me. This is Part 2. If you haven't heard Part 1 of how to build more capacity for your organization, please check that out before listening to this episode. It would mean the world to me if you'd go ahead and subscribe on YouTube and iTunes podcast to stay in tune with this awesome content. You can also find the episode on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Anchor Podcasts. Also, lastly, like or follow the Heavy Revy Show on Facebook and Instagram so we can go ahead and keep you up to date. All right, so let's go ahead and let's dive right into how to build more capacity in your organization, Part 2. Again, all of this started from a little heavy revy that the Lord dropped on me about, seeing gaps and how to accomplish, those gaps. So the Lord dropped this saying, it says, good leaders see gaps and fill them. Great leaders see gaps and train and empowers others to fill them. That's huge. I'm going to say that one more time. Good leaders see gaps and fill them. Great leaders see gaps and train and empower others to fill them. So we broke this down. So I'll give you a quick recap of part 1 of how to build more capacity in your organization. And we talked about, first off, what gaps are. What does that mean, seeing gaps? So gaps are issues. They're the tasks that need to be done to accomplish the vision or goal that aren't being done, or they're roadblocks that are stopping you. And again, every leader, whether good or great, see gaps. It's just what you do about the gaps that makes you good or great. Okay. Secondly, we talked about the job of a leader, and we compared leaders are like coaches. So anytime you watch a football game, no one gets upset when the football coach isn't dressed in pads. Why? Because that's not their job. Their time has passed. They're no longer playing the game necessarily, but they're leading a team to accomplish the win or the success of the game. Okay, so that is their job. They're no longer doing the game. So the other point we made under that of a job of a leader is the more you're doing, the less you are leading. I'll say that again. Someone else needs to hear that. The more you're doing, the less you are leading. All right, coach? So go ahead, take the football pads off. Your time is no longer there, all right? That is no longer your purpose. Your purpose is to train and empowers those players to be the MVPs, okay? So again, seeing gaps, what is our job? And then thirdly, why leaders don't train and empower others. Now, again, I can talk all day on this podcast. There's a lot of reasons why leaders don't train and empower others. You can hear more of it on part 1, again, of the episode. But the one I want to mention in this recap is leaders have tried, but people are unfaithful. Now, to me, not to sound harsh or anything like that, but that to me is one of the lamest excuses. Again, your job as a leader is to inspire, to get people to hop on board, to get people to join you. So if you're having issues with that, you may want to talk with the Lord. Lord, did you really call me into leadership? And again, I know that sounds harsh. I'll encourage you. Praise God, if God has put leadership or put you on in your heart to lead, praise God, you can do it. It's in you. However, leadership isn't something that's easy. If it was, everyone would do it, okay? And you're probably still a good leader, but let's step over to that side of being a great leader, okay? So to start this episode off, or to start this, talk on how to build more capacity for your organization, part 2, we're going to talk about the first point today, and that's leaders must take ownership. So why are people unfaithful to helping your cause, or why aren't they on board with you? You need to ask yourself 3 questions. Is your organization clear? Okay. Excuse me. Is your organization clear? Are you clear on what you need? Are you clear on what you're going after? Why you're here? What you're here to accomplish? If you're not clear on that, it's going to be hard for people to want to jump on board with you. Secondly, how is it benefiting the people that are hopping on board with you? If you can't answer that for them, no one's going to want to, join you. And then thirdly, are they trained to accomplish the task? You may get people who hop on board with you, but if they're not trained and you're holding them to a certain standard on how to do the job, or on the job, they're going to want to leave. They're not going to want to stay with you. So we're going to dive into those three things, and I believe that truly is going to help you build more capacity for your organization. So, step one, under that, we asked, is your organization clear? So we're going to talk about organizing and building your structure out. Okay. I love Billy Epperhart. Billy Epperhart talks about, you need to be a leader slash manager. There's other books out there that would talk about, leadership is all good. It's about connecting with people. Manager is all about getting the systems and all that jazz down. And then technician is more on just doing the job. You need both, though. Obviously, you need all three in order to be a success, but you need both when you're a leader. Okay, you need that manager side and that leader side. Okay, so first, let's organize and let's build our structure out. And the way we're going to break this down is we're going to talk about the children's pastor that I helped out, that I mentioned in part one of how to build more capacity for your organization. So again, just to give you a recap, I helped out a children's pastor, her and her husband and two daughters. They were taking care of the service of children's, and they were doing a lot. Let me give you the list that they were doing. So they're unlocking the door, setting up the game room, setting up the sound equipment, unlocking all the rooms, getting their check-in and check-out system in order, checking students in, interacting with students, starting worship, doing the group game, sharing a message, interacting with students again, checking students out, cleaning the room, getting ready for the second service, and then doing the list all over again. All right. So that is a lot, and that's what they were doing. And their issue was they were needing help, getting people on board with them to, accomplish the things of children and just doing children's church. So with that, praise God, that is a lot. Now they had four, which that's good. That's a good thing to start with. Some people start with just by themselves. But what the way that we broke this down and helping them is first we wrote down every task that needed to be done. So everything I just listed to you was all the tasks that needed to be done. Okay. After that, we began to create groups based on the tasks. So, and a couple of things that I listed out, a couple of groups I wrote down were like setup and tear down group, maybe a check-in group, maybe a children's leader, maybe, a worship leader. Okay. So four different groups. That's awesome. That's simple. After I created those groups, I assigned those tasks to certain groups. So the way it's looked is set up and tear down. They unlock the door. They set it up the game room. They're setting up the sound equipment, and they're unlocking all the rooms. And again, they were cleaning the room, getting ready for the next service. The check-in group, they were getting their check-in and check-out system in order, and they were checking students in, and then at the end, they were checking students out. The children's leaders, they're interacting with students, they were doing the group games, and again, at the end, they were interacting with the students again. Worship, they were doing worship. And then at the end, the pastor was able to share the message. Okay. So they're broken down really into five different groups, and we assigned those little tasks to those groups. Now, again, I remember if you remember right, it was the children's pastor, her husband, and two daughters. So four of them can already hop into these groups. Okay. But the thing is you got to times it by two because it was a first service and then there was a second service. So there's really like eight, right? So now that they had it organized in the sense of they have their groups, they have the different things that they need to do, they can now start recruiting and keep getting people on board where it's clear that whoever helps out this, the children's pastor, they know exactly what they need. And so what that does for the leader, that helps the leader decide, okay, do I need, 20 different volunteers? Well, the answer to that is no. You really don't need 20. I mean, depending on the size, but according to all the tasks that need to be done, no, you don't need 20, right? You need eight different people to come on and help you. All right. So when you create all these different groups, or when you get all your tasks written out, again, create groups. Once you get the groups out, put those tasks to those groups, and then start recruiting people based on the groups that you need. Okay. And so at the beginning, you may be wearing all the groups hats. I like calling them hats. And it's important to know you're wearing multiple hats. So if you were doing this all by yourself, it's important to know that when you're unlocking the door, you're wearing your setup and teardown hat. When you're checking students in, or you're getting your check-in system in order, know that you're wearing your check-in hat. When you're playing with students and you're, just hanging out with them, know that you're wearing your children's leader hat. When you're sharing the message, know that you're wearing your pastor hat. Whatever it is. But it's important to know that you're wearing multiple hats, because when you get someone who wants to help you, or if you're looking for somebody to help you, you know that, hey, I can give you one of my hats. I don't want to wear this hat. Here, you wear the setup and tear down hat. Or I want to empower you with leadership. Here, be a children's leader. Wear this hat. Okay. So again, it's important to know, but you want to delegate those hats. Okay. Again, good leaders see gaps and they fill them, but great leaders see gaps. They train and empower others to fill them. Okay. So that is, again, organizing and building your structure. Secondly, why and how will it benefit them as the leader? Okay, so again, one of the issues of why leaders don't train and empower others is because leaders have tried, but people are unfaithful. Well, if you have it clear of what they need to do, they're willing to hop on board. But the second thing is, why and how is it going to benefit the leader? Example in my, children's pastor, set up and tear down. To be honest, when someone first hears that, or sees that, they're going to ask, how is that going to benefit me in just growing as a leader if I'm just unlocking the doors, setting up games, and setting up the sound, and unlocking all the rooms, and, cleaning everything up? They may not feel like, man, I'm doing something big, or I'm making an impact. When in reality, they are, but it's your job as a leader to help them see that. Okay. So first, start with the why. Why is your organization here, and why is their position important? From Simon Sinek's book, Start with the Why, he says there are only two ways to influence human behavior. You can manipulate, or you can inspire. So, and what inspires people most about joining your organization is knowing why. So share why, set up and tear down is going to be a huge impact for the church. But secondly, especially for myself, I was in a podcast, or I was interviewing someone on my podcast that's going to be posted in the future. And he was talking about how most people, they want to go after the leadership side without, going through the process. They want to get to the end of the goal without going through the steps. And for myself, the way I encourage people, especially when it comes to setup and tear down, I feel in my heart I'm called to pastor one day, that I'm called to, raise a church and raise up leaders. However, and I knew that from, since I come out here to Colorado. But that didn't stop me from, saying, oh, I can't set up and tear down. I didn't look at that as a sense of, oh, that's not a pastor's job, so I'm not going to do that. I knew it as a process, and I knew that was the steps I need to make, and that it was going to help build character and just help me to, get to know the people around me who are helping set up and tear down. So you want to cast the why. Why is, again, you're sowing seeds, and if you're faithful in the little, God's going to promote you over much. So, that's what you want to start with. Start with the why. Secondly, also knowing how it's going to benefit your people for joining you is huge. Again, for myself, I've never had any issues with finding volunteers for my youth group or children's group. I focused when I was recruiting members for my team on how it will benefit them. And sometimes I wouldn't have to tell them, how it's going to benefit, because the why brought them in. The why was, big enough to the sense of, well, I just want to join you. Okay. So again, why and how is it going to benefit your leader? And maybe write that out. Write that out for each group, or, each position that you create, why and how it's going to be a benefit to them as a leader. Okay, so we talked about creating the organization. If they're organized and they know exactly what needs to be done, that's going to be more, they're going to be wanting to be more on board with you. Secondly, if you give them the why and the how it's going to benefit them, that's going to, cause them to want to be more part of your team. Okay. And so lastly, train and empower them. Again, this is huge, because here's the thing: you can be successful at, creating your organization. You can create the structure and what needs to be done. You can create your groups. You can create your positions. You can create each bullet point that needs to be done. You can inspire them and say, hey, this is what's going to happen. This is how why it's going to, it's good. And this is how it's going to benefit you. But if you don't train and empower them, man, they may join you for a minute, but they're going to leave eventually if they're not trained or empowered. So when it comes to training, write your process out and put your organization on paper. Okay. Again, Billy Epplehart, my awesome business school teacher, taught us big time, and he has a saying, if it's not in writing, it doesn't count. And man, how I've known that to be true in my job, how I've known that to be true in churches that I've been a part of. A lot of confusion comes for things not being in writing. So you want to write out your processes and you want to put that on paper. And you want to train people what you want to see. People thrive off of clear expectations. Okay, example, your setup and tear down when you're training them that position, you want to train them that they may want to know, when do you want them there? When do you want everything set up by? How do you unlock the door? And you may be like, that's simple, but no, trust me, I've been in that situation where I've had a key that was funky and I had a hard time unlocking that thing. All right. So I needed training on that. Okay. Train them on how you want the game set up, train them on how you want the sound set up, and, set the expectation and make it clear. Everything that you want done, everything that you want accomplished, make sure that you put it down on writing and trade them according to what's in writing. Okay. And then lastly, you want to empower them. So once they're doing what you've taught them, challenge them to be creative and find different ways to improve the process. Allow them to take ownership of it. Okay, you may lead and guide them in the right direction, but eventually, you're not going to be doing all the little steps anymore. Okay, you're going to be that coach who's stepping back and just watching them play the game, and you're going to be coaching them in the right way to go after it. Okay, but here's the thing, the coach sees from the perspective of the sideline, where each player they see in the position that they're right in. Okay, especially for me being a left tackle, I'm able to see the defensive end on my left side, and seeing what he's all about. Where my coach, he just sees, okay, I see the groups lined up, but he doesn't see exactly what I see. I see more detailed, I see more closely, again, in a business term, I see more day to day. I'm right there in closer contact with the customer or or the competition, where the coach or the business owner or the leader, they see from a more higher or big picture perspective. Okay, so allow them to give input to improve your processes. Okay, so again, is your organization clear? Did you build structure out where people are clear on what they need to do? Okay. Secondly, why and how is it going to benefit that leader? All right. And thirdly, train and empower them. All right. Give them the power. And last thing I just want to say on empowering, allow them again to be creative and find different ways to improve the process. Allow them to look at their job, allow them to look at their position. There's Robert Kiyosaki from Rich Dad Poor Dad talks about how people, generally work in their business, but they never work on it. What does that mean? When you work in your business, you're just doing the job. You're not looking at the systems and process and how you can improve it. You're just doing it, right? They say, for children's, I just got to set this up and set this up and set this up. Okay. But you're not looking at, man, maybe I don't need to set this up. Maybe I need to delegate this to somebody else, or maybe I need to empower someone else to do this. Okay. However, okay, but again, challenge them to be creative and find different ways to improve the process. Allow them to take ownership of it, but remind them of this. Okay. Good leaders see gaps and fill them, but great leaders see gaps and train and empower others to fill them. Put that on them. Because when you do that, they're going to begin creating teams. They're going to begin to create other leaders. All right. And that's how you build more capacity for your organization. Thank you for listening in. You guys are awesome. You have yourself a blessed rest of your day. And again, take this in deep. Ask God to make this real to you, because you cannot grow past your own revelation.
Friends and family, thank you for viewing this message. We hope this episode has inspired you. Please share it for others to hear. Remember, we are now on iTunes Podcasts and Spotify, so check us out. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.